Well, I'm really glad you raised that. So let's ask, why the hell should America support Ukraine? Good question, right? And the answer is in an agreement that America signed in 1994. I've talked about this before.
Yes.
It's the Budapest Memorandum. In 1994, Ukraine had the third largest nuclear arsenal in the world, strategic and tactical nuclear weapons, as a result of the downfall of the Soviet Union and the split. And the issue was, are we going to worry about nuclear war? Is there something we can do to reduce the chances of a nuclear war? And what is it that we can do? And the parties got together, Russia, Ukraine, the United States, the UK, France, and China. And in that meeting in Budapest in 1994, they signed an agreement. And the agreement was, Ukraine, surrender all your weapons, all your nuclear weapons to Russia. And if you do, we, the United States and France and the UK and China, lesser France and the UK, but still part of the agreement. But we, the UK, the United States, and Russia, will honor and protect your sovereignty and independence. That was a solemn promise to avoid a nuclear conflict. It was not some kind of side deal, something to shuffle around on the table. It was a major event and a major commitment, first made by Ukraine, and then secondly by the other parties who signed the accords by promising or guaranteeing Ukraine's sovereignty. Now, there's a joke that comes up in my mind about this.
Yeah.
And it's, if you're eating bacon and eggs for breakfast, you might bear this in mind. What's the difference between a contribution and a commitment? Well, the difference is that the chickens made a contribution, but the pig made a commitment.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, Ukraine made the commitment of giving up all its nuclear arms. But the US in particular made the promise that they will honor and support Ukraine's independence. So this is not charity we're talking about.
Yeah.
This is a major commitment made by the United States. So that being said, we go now to mediation, and what can we learn about mediation from what happened? Well, first question, who should be at the table mediating a conflict between the Russian Federation and Ukraine, and who should be at the table? Well, the answer is all three parties should be at the table at the very least, I would say. Starting a mediation without the party that has to agree to the agreement doesn't make sense. So right off the bat in Alaska, there was a false note to the meeting. What is Trump doing meeting with Putin? And I'm asking that question for a good reason, because you got to understand, who is Putin? Putin is the leader of Russia, a country that has been a colonial empire for over 300 years. What is more, Putin, who's been in office for something like 20 years now and is an eternal president in Russia, it seems, has been responsible for the deaths of the following. Number one, of his own army, casualties and deaths in the 3-year invasion, over 1 million people. Number two, of the casualties and deaths on the Ukrainian side in the army, several hundred thousands. On the deaths of Ukrainian civilians, tens of thousands. On the abduction of Ukrainian children, tens of thousands. Now, he is indicted by the ICC, war criminal. And if you don't believe it, just watch Bucha on TV, Irpin on TV, and just watch what's going on in the on TV daily in terms of attacks on civilian targets. He's an indicted war criminal. And in the worst war, land war, in Europe since World War II. That being the case, was it suitable for Trump to greet him in the manner he was greeted. First of all, why is he greeting just Trump, but never mind, just Putin, but in this manner, red carpet, waiting for Trump to get off his, Putin to get off his plane, applauding as Putin comes towards him, greeting with a handshake and also with an embrace Putin as they meet, smiling for the cameras, walking together on the red carpet to the presidential limousine and taking him, this indicted war criminal who has killed over what I mentioned, taking him in that car for a trip to have a meeting for 3 hours. What does that say to the world about Trump and America? What is America doing that? That's the first question. And then they spend 3 hours together talking. And at the end of the 3 hours, we do not get the result that Trump has indicated he must have in order for this to be successful, namely a ceasefire. A ceasefire of daily attacks, including on the day of the meeting, while they're sitting there talking, there's attacks of Russia on Ukraine. Not Ukraine on Russia, but on Russia on Ukraine. And by the way, the whole war could be over if Russia would just retreat from Ukrainian territories. Over completely. There would be no deaths. But because Russia's got troops in Ukraine and because Russia is dedicated to destroying Ukraine, we got this anomaly of no ceasefire, no progress, it seems, or little progress, if any, other than let's have another meeting between Trump and Zelensky in Washington. And that's basically the end of Alaska. And we watch, as we stand there watching as Putin gets on the airplane and flies off to his country, back to his country. Really? Assume Hitler came for a visit like that. Is that how we would conduct our affairs? Would that be the same way we would treat Hitler? I think, that's the vision. From the point of view of Ukraine, that's the vision that hurts. I mean, that just floors them. Later, there were Russian tanks invading Ukraine with US and Russian flags on the tanks as they're invading Ukraine. That's how far we've gone. This is a kind of a Munich where, for those who know history, basically Chamberlain came out of Munich, a meeting with Hitler, declaring there's peace in our time, but what it was is basically a surrender to Hitler of his desire to take over, the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia. It was just a appalling development.